I know we don't respect the religious around here, and for good reason, but this is going to be proof that one of them is absolutely lying for the Lord, and there's no debating it. Granted, the religious don't care, but truth is truth, whether you like it or not. So let's see how this goes down, coming up next. Here's another video sent in by Toaster6236, who's been doing a lot of hunting for good videos to go after. Thanks, I really appreciate it. You can send direct links to me either via email or in the comments in any video, and I'll take a look at them. If you have problems getting a direct link to me, take off the HTTPS and it should go through just fine. YouTube just sucks. This one is on William Lane Craig, and I think we're all going to recognize that he's just a bullshit artist with big words, but let's take a look at what he actually has to say, because it might be worthwhile, right? Yeah, I can't keep a straight face at that either, so let's get to it.
"30 years or so, it has been shown experimentally that in quantum mechanics you can have creation without a cause of, you mentioned it, subatomic particles. And at the very beginning of the universe, as you also said, the universe itself was subatomic. Why is it so inconceivable that the mechanisms that work now didn't work back then?"
That shot of his face is really all that we need. He's confused because now he has to stray outside of his comfort zone and address a question that he hasn't got a clue about. That's why he and other Christians, they don't really want to talk to us. Now, I'm sure he's going to make a bunch of nonsensical claims and, well, it seems to me stories, because that's really all that he can do. But it would be really interesting to see him and an actual expert up on stage debating. Meanwhile, they're probably hustling this guy away from the microphone so he doesn't cause any more trouble. Who knows, though? Let's see.
The reason is that in the so-called quantum creation of subatomic particles, you always have a material substratum, a physical system from which these emerge.
Sure, because we don't know of anything that exists beyond the material, anything beyond the physical that actually exists. That's all that we have any evidence for. Cue him trying to introduce the supernatural. I'm pretty sure anyhow, and we'll see how well my magic 8-ball is working today. But that isn't demonstrable, is it? It's all just made up. It's what he has to rely on because he can't actually answer the question. There's going to be a whole bunch of empty, unsupported claims upcoming, and somebody really needs to call him out on it. How do you know that, Bill? How do you demonstrate that any of that is true? I mean, to anybody outside of your faith, because your faith doesn't mean a damn thing. As far as we're concerned, your faith means nothing. We want to see your evidence, and he won't have any, will he? But we're going to keep watching to see what he actually says. Let's just see how close I got.
For example, the quantum vacuum is not nothing, as the layman might think when he hears the word vacuum. It is a sea of roiling energy, and the particles come out of the vacuum, so that the vacuum is the cause of the existence of these particles.
Nope. A cause is an action. It is something that is done that brings about a change. The existence of a quantum vacuum doesn't cause things, any more than the existence of rotting meat causes flies. The whole idea of spontaneous generation is nonsense. We get flies because other flies laid eggs in the rotting meat. Those flies hatch into maggots and they grow into flies, yada, yada, yada. That's the very basis of the Reddy experiment. The flies have to actively lay eggs to produce more flies, or at least to continue their own reproductive life cycle. The rotting meat is just a substrate in which it happens. The quantum vacuum, which he talks about nothingness, but science says nothingness has never and will never exist, but that's just a substrate too. It doesn't cause quantum particles to appear or disappear. We have not established that a cause exists at all. Now, one could, and we just don't know about it, but here Craig is backed into a corner because his entire thesis with the Kalam is that nothing existed, which never happened, and that in order for there to be anything, there had to be an active cause, which we now have examples of things where that apparently just isn't true. I don't think this is going to go well for him. How about you?
In the case of the universe, however, as we just discussed a moment ago, we have an absolute beginning of all physical reality.
No, you don't, and nobody but the religious say that you do. The Big Bang came from a state of intense heat and density. That's not nothing. That's something. Yet Craig can't admit that because there goes the Kalam, right? He is not being honest. He is lying to you. Now, this is an 8-year-old video, but he's still saying the exact same thing despite being corrected many, many, many times because he just doesn't care. No theist does. How many times have you seen the Kalam being trotted out, aside from what I do on the channel? It happens all the time. Yet the Kalam is one of the most ludicrous arguments ever. It doesn't even argue for the existence of any gods. It just says, a cause, from which the religious desperately try to extract their deities. They're just not there, though. But we know that neither Craig nor any other theist is actually after the truth. The actual truth, not just the imaginary fantasy land in their heads. They just really want to believe, no matter how dumb their beliefs actually are.
So that there isn't any sort of prior thing that could serve as a quantum substratum for the creation of the universe.
And that just proves that either he's lying or he's ignorant. Probably both. Remember, he's still saying the exact same thing today, years after he should have known better. But he just doesn't care. All of his Kalam nonsense rests on the belief that there was nothing. But there never was nothing. Nobody says that there was nothing except idiots like him. Science doesn't say that there was nothing. In fact, science says exactly the opposite. There was something, an intense state of heat and density. How do you have heat or density without stuff? You can't. Now, we don't know what that stuff was, but there was certainly stuff there. The second that Craig acknowledges that, though, the whole Kalam thing collapses under the weight of its own irrationality, but he's built his entire career flouting the Kalam, and he's not going to give up on that, is he? Because he's just a lying sack of shit. I trust nobody's surprised.
If there is this sort of quantum gravity region in the early universe, that will be part of the universe. It's an early stage of the universe, but it doesn't explain where the universe itself came from.
He really is dumb, isn't he? The Big Bang only explains the origin of our specific version of space-time. He doesn't want that, though. He's looking for the origin of absolutely everything, and that's not a thing that anyone can possibly address. So he's conflating the origin of our instantiation of space-time with the origin of everything, just so he can get to his imaginary friend that he really, really, really wants to be real, but that he has no actual evidence for. This way, he can just lie to his followers and say, see, science agrees with me. No, you're just misrepresenting science, and you know it. You are lying to people because even you can't be this dumb. Oh, but this is just an old video, some might say. Yeah, but he's still saying the exact same thing today. He hasn't changed his mind because he was never using his mind to begin with. William Lane Craig is a complete con man. How anybody can disagree with that is entirely beyond me.
I should also just add one other point, and that is this appeal to these quantum processes simply assumes without justification that quantum indeterminacy is real rather than merely epistemic in your mind.
You notice just how nervous he looked there, right? He was trying really hard to find a way to spin it so he didn't look really dumb. Too bad he failed. But even if we grant his point, then why can't we apply that to anything else? How do we know that the Big Bang isn't just something in our heads? How do we know that it isn't just a misrepresentation of the facts? Because there goes Kalam again, right? He has to demand that science is right about the Big Bang, but wrong about the quantum world, because otherwise he's out of a job. This is blatant dishonesty. And it isn't like he understands any of this to begin with. He just really wants it to be true. Or at least he wants other people to think it's true, so he keeps selling books. So people keep paying him and watching him strut around on a stage like a fucking peacock. This is his con. This is all it is. It's fun to watch a lot of apologists struggle like this, and we've seen it a couple of times. Frank Turek just giving up and letting somebody else take over because he knows he's on dangerous ground. Taking these questions from the audience is potentially dangerous, and every now and then they get backed into a corner and they've got to fight their way back out, and that's why they don't really want to talk to us. They just look stupid when they do.
But there are at least 10 different interpretations of quantum physics, some of which are thoroughly deterministic. And all of these are empirically equivalent and mathematically consistent. In fact, it is only the deterministic interpretations that are compatible with quantum cosmology.
I bet he has no idea whatsoever what those words mean. Keep in mind that Craig has no actual education in the hard sciences. This is just enough gobbledygook that he can spout that it makes his intended religious audience nod and think he's got a clue. But if he was in an actual conversation with an actual scientist, he just looked like the fool that he is. That's why the guy at the microphone, and I've got no clue what his background is, but let's just pretend he's a degreed scientist for the moment, just for funsies. But he isn't continuing to ask questions, is he? Just asking Craig what any of these 10 interpretations would be fun, because I bet Craig doesn't know. He isn't conversant in any of it. He could just be lying, but he doesn't say enough to really be sure. I mean, you could look at, say, the Göttingen-Copenhagen statistical interpretation, which is based on the Born rule, which interprets the wave function as a probability amplitude and absolutely requires the lack of determinism in quantum mechanics. But, he wouldn't understand any of those words, would he? Yet he's up there at the podium pretending that he knows what he's doing. And I think we all know otherwise.
So that there is no justification for assuming that even in the case of quantum creation of particles, this is indeterminate and that they do not have deterministic causes.
We don't know either way. All we can say is that we have never found a cause yet. But that's how science works, isn't it? I've said this a lot. All knowledge is in the moment. We know what we know right now. We might know more tomorrow. We might know tomorrow that the things that we know today are wrong. That's why no knowledge is eternal. Everything is provisional. But that's not what Craig and his cronies are looking for. They want things to be true today, tomorrow, and forever so that they don't have to think about it anymore, and that's just not how reality works. But then again, he has no interest in reality, does he? This is one more good reason to entirely ignore William Lane Craig, because he is demonstrably lying to his followers. He's not after truth. He only cares about his childish fifis and making money off the backs of the religiously gullible. He is a good example of what not to do. Yet he's popular among the religious because he uses a bunch of big words and rarely cracks under pressure. That doesn't mean that he has the slightest idea what the hell he's doing, and when his faults and failures are pointed out, he just ignores it and keeps doing what he was doing wrong, because he just doesn't care. He has never cared, even in an old video like this. He doesn't learn from his mistakes and change his message. He can't. He'd be discredited in the eyes of his followers. So he just keeps spouting the same old demonstrably wrong bullshit and hopes that nobody on his side notices. Granted, they're not that bright to begin with. That's why they keep getting taken. Because Christians are really, really dumb. Sad, isn't it?